7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Who that? Who that? Who that? Who that?
Welcome everyone to the Foxton. I am your debonair host, Mr. Fox Squire. Now, for your viewing pleasure, we have the wonderful Amanda Rae, and they will be my company tonight. But before they introduce themselves, we have to thank Head Nerds in Charge for bringing me in and onto the greater HNIC network. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Don't forget to share to HNIC on YouTube and all other platforms. Now you can go to headnerdsincharge.com and you can go and select from their fabulous merchandise and go ahead and sign up for that Patreon. And without further ado, let's embrace the spectacle and dive in with my guest. Hi, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hey. Already getting the hey-heys. Love it.
Love it.
All right. So, Amanda, how long have we known each other, actually? Like, this is back from the Doctor Who days. This is back from
Yes, this was like, we're going back
Who
5-6 years now. But time is really weird because of the pandemic, you know?
Right.
And,
Changed
you know, exactly. A lot of, and I started out as a cosplayer and now I freelance write pop culture reviews and stuff, so it's sort of a wild journey for me too. So and of course it's always now that I'm going back to conventions, it's like, oh wait, you changed your hair, people changed their hair, they've changed, like it's like, oh wait, you like you're not in the same costume, you're not dressed as Batman. I don't know you now.
Who is that masked man? Who is that?
Who is like? Wait, you're not 12th Doctor anymore, or you're not dressed as Rory. I don't know you, or you're not Amy Pond. It's just weird. That is life, though.
I want to say it's been what, like 5?
Yeah, it's been about that long.
About 5-6 years. So, Amanda, tell us. I know how you describe yourself. Tell us how you describe yourself for our audience and for everyone, so they can know more about you and what you do, and we'll get more into the meat and potatoes of that.
Sure. What I do basically online is I watch a lot of British television, especially period dramas. I love Doctor Who as well, and I write about not just the shows themselves, but sort of deeper issues that many of these things bring up. I also like introducing into my reviews and coverage and interviews perspective on race, because a lot of times with these fandoms, it's mostly white reviewers and they're missing subtle things, or they're not picking up on themes that are, racist or problematic. Also, just thinking about too with fandom, just like making fandom more inclusive. It's a lot of what I do. I do a lot of calling out bad actors and trolls in my fandoms. I've been active online as a fan for about probably a decade now, but the freelancing actually began because of the pandemic. So it was a weird coincidence. A friend of mine at Denny was like, hey, we need somebody to come to recap Outlander every week. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm already watching Outlander. I might as well get paid to watch Outlander now. So that's how it started. It was like right as the pandemic was beginning. So in March 2020 was when that season 5 launched. And from there, I've covered all the big UK TV and pure drama release sets. So Bridgerton, that's a lot of what I've been talking about recently, because that's just all everybody wants to talk about.
I know.
Bridgerton, Sanditon, I went Mr. Malcolm's List, the new film that came out, Persuasion on Netflix, and some other interesting stuff in between. Occasionally I get to
Downton Abbey was on that list as well.
Yeah, I started blogging with Downton Abbey. I had a Downton Abbey blog on Tumblr.
You're taking back there? You gonna show my age like that? That I know what Tumblr was back in the day? Come on.
I mean, people still use
calling
Tumblr,
me out about the Tumblr.
Sorry, I mean, I know people still use Tumblr, but not how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it started out with Tumblr. Then I went to school for a couple of years. I went to grad school for journalism because I got my bachelor's degree in journalism. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do more of that. So I got my master's in journalism, and then kind of had my I don't know what to do with this piece of paper now. So I got my day job, which is the more important thing because Sally Mae comes knocking. So I do social media and website backend for a redacted international media company. And then but my job during the day is all politics and hard things. So, but I've always loved entertainment. So just restarting my Tumblr blogging and Twitter blogging, and then turns into occasionally on some of these podcasts. And then when Den a Geek offered Outlander recaps, I was like, I'm just going to take it and then see where it goes. And it's gone to some really great places. I don't know what's next, but I am enjoying the ride so far because I've got to talk about so many of my favorite shows, and it's been actually one of the best things I've done too, besides writing things for Den a Geek. I also finally made a connection at PBS, or one of the PBS stations. So I blog also. I also have blog for GBH Boston. They're one of the PBS channels, so I get to talk about all the PBS shows for them, which is so fun. Because I've loved watching Masterpiece. I've been watching Masterpiece since the 90s, so finally getting to talk about those things like Sanditon and Grant Chester and there's all their other great shows. So it's been a lot of fun to talk about that. Sometimes in fandom, not so fun because you kind of sometimes I kill people's good times when I'm like, y'all, we need to talk about this issue.
Well, I mean, speaking of killing people's good time, when we were at the Doctor Who convention, it wasn't my first year. I think it was the second year that I went. We did that panel, The Color of Who. And I mean, it was not the most hard-hitting panel, but it definitely was some people were like, oh, why did you talk about that? Doctor Who's Doctor Who. And fast forward to now, and what are we getting? But a chocolate brown brother as Doctor Who.
Exactly.
A woman as Doctor Who. Same things we were talking about in the panel back in yesteryear. I'm just saying,
here's the thing. I think a lot of Doctor Who fandom has been sort of, for me, both eye-opening and then sometimes irritating at the same time because I think for folks who don't know what Doctor Who fandom, I volunteered at LAHU, which is where I met Fox years way back in the day. They're coming back as a different name right now. They're called. I think their next event is in November. It's called Meglos or something like that. I forgot. Really? Yeah, I think they're kind of experimenting with different themes. So, but still very classic Who oriented. Yeah. I also had presented panels at formerly known as Regeneration Who, and also Gallifrey 1 in LA in February. That's where most of the Doctor Who stuff in New York, in America, happens, is at Galley. So I've presented on several panels about diversity, and I'm like, every year there's always that couple white people who are shocked. I'm like, this is the future. We've already seen it in the press releases, and this is the future, y'all. I think even before Jodie Whittaker was announced as Doctor, I think people were already I was like, this next switch, I was like, they're gonna do something big.
Well, if it wasn't way back in the day, and I'm not gonna jump, but you remember back in the day, they brought in that black woman who was River Song. That she was one of the, and that she was there. I think she was there the year that we first met each other.
Yes.
I want to say she was there. And that was people were like, oh, you can't do that. I was like, we are talking about an alien being who regenerates themselves, and you're saying they can't be brown and she can't. I'm sorry, what? Because this is back in the 90s. This is back when Matt was Doctor Who. So we're talking about
people.
He's 3-4 who's back.
Yeah, Mel's, for some people, hit blindside people. I mean, granted, now that I rewatch those episodes, some of the internalized logic isn't there.
Yes.
But again, even from that point, like they're beginning to notice that Doctor Who is not being watched just by white people in England anymore. There's I think I wish they did more of those. I mean, I know COVID was probably a factor in this. The world tour, like there were Doctor Who fans speaking all kinds of different languages in that tour. And I'm like, they went like in season 8, they promoted Doctor Mysterio in Mexico, for example, and like people came out like with all their old swag from the 70s and everything. I was like, this is what we need to see. Like, I'm like, y'all, it's not just y'all anymore. Like, thanks to the internet and streaming. That's the thing too. That was the other thing too. It's like back when we first started watching Doctor Who, and I started watching Doctor Who for folks and watching in 2007, which is an entirely different planet in terms of how you can access Doctor Who and watch it. Like, y'all have it easy these days just watching things on HBO Max.
Oh, no. Wait, I don't know if you know about this. There's Pluto.tv, right?
Yeah, that's it.
They have a whole Who channel. Now, they don't show all the Who, but they show a lot of the old school ones. You don't have to go far. You could be on your laptop anywhere, and you can get you some Who right there. Like the nerds of yesteryear do not have to work like we used to have to work to find a little crumb, a little something of our favorite fandoms, whether it be Doctor Who. I loved Masterpiece Theater. I still love it. But I remember digging through, like I had to wait for that one Sunday when when like PBS lined up just so with the Masterpiece and there was something on, and then I had to stop everything to even catch that little crumb. I was like, oh, crumb. There's no more crumbs. You can have the
whole BritBox, it's Acorn, everything that was on PBS back in the day. Also, Amazon has a ton of the old PBS stuff as well. So between the three of them and Pluto, you're good. Because
exactly.
BritBox also has old classic.
Well, and I want to go back. So one of the ways when you look up you, and not just on your Twitter, which is your at Amanda R Prescott, for the Twitter feed. When you're looking everything up, you have your own. There it is, at Amanda R Prescott. If you want to follow more and more on Twitter, it's right there below us. But when you're looking everything up, I noticed that there is definitely there's a word in there that I want you to go into some detail about, because when I first saw it, I was like, I had to look this up. You have that you're an Anglophile, and I want you to share with us what that is, because I know what it is, but I know how people can hear it, even though that's not what it is. Go right ahead.
So when I say I'm an Anglophile, I say that I primarily watch, listen, etc., like anything British. Or when I say British, when I say British, I mean British in the broadest sense. It's sort of not just because the UK is one country. There's also Ireland, and also little subdivisions inside there. Also, I watch. Occasionally, I end up watching some Canadian and Australian stuff on streaming, because that's how it goes sometimes. So when I say that I'm an Anglophile, it's not in the political sense. I think some people. It's not in a it's not about politics for me. It's just like I just love British culture. It's a thing. It's been when I was younger, a lot of people just either were all into typical Western and anime, like Western or American cult movies, TV, comic books, a lot of stuff. And then there's a lot of people who love stuff from Japan and anime and all that stuff, and I was like, no, I want to watch and listen to British music and British television. That was kind of, but back in the 90s, it was and in the early 2000s, it was way harder to do that than it is now.
It was a different world. It is a different world. I can count on one hand how many American shows I actively follow, like TV shows, for example. I can count them on one hand, and they rotate occasionally because seasons change and stuff. But I definitely. That's me. And that's the thing, is that being that type of nerd and everything like that is a type of nerd. It is a type of thing, and that's totally fine. Just as much as we appreciate people who are like, oh, I'm really into anime, there's more, guys. There's more to life than just anime, and I'm not down on my anime love. Let me tell you that I'll be a Black Butler fan till I die. But that doesn't mean that takes away from Masterpiece Theater and some of these other English in the sense of British shows that come up. And I just thought I'm going to say Jamel, correct me if I'm wrong, like really. He just said, I appreciate this page and point of view overwhelmingly, and keep the content coming. So that's definitely a good one. But people need to understand that you're going to run into a different type of nerd than just your anime nerd who is blurred. You can be both. You can be a blurred who's not into anime and into another type of nerddom. It's totally a thing.
Yep.
In walks Amanda Rae.
Yeah, so it's funny, like when I back when I was like several years back, when I first started like following like the Black nerd pages, I felt kind of awkward because I was like, the conversations are going all over my head, because I was like, wait a second, the only fandoms here that I could kind of relate to, pretty much I was hanging out with pretty much the Disney folks.
Yes.
Disney and Harry Potter back then. I was like, okay, Harry Potter isn't like my top fave, but I know the story and stuff. Like, hey, y'all, the Disney folks, I watch Disney movies as well, so I was like, okay, that's easy. But then when folks were talking about comics and anime, I was just like, can we talk about the plot twist on I was like
Outlander.
I was like Outlander, like stuff like that. So, but then when I went to actual blurred meetups, in the city and elsewhere, Dragon Con was a big one. I was like, and I noticed like just how diverse in terms of like what people were into. I was like, oh wow, it's not just people were into all sorts of stuff. When I went to the first Blacklanders Dragon Con meetup, like Boshu I went to, I was like, whoa. I mean, I came dressed as Amy Pond from Doctor Who at that point. I had my Karen Gillan photo op like
that. Oh yeah,
3 hours
Go ahead.
When we met, possibly.
Yeah.
So like I had my Karen Gillan photo op 3 hours later, so I was like, I can't change. So you're gonna get this fandom right now. And people were in all sorts of things. Like somebody had a throwback cartoons. There were it was a whole, somebody did a Boondocks cosplay. There was just so much stuff. I was like, this is great. Because so often, a lot of times people just get trapped into like the folks who also have like follow their same fandoms. So I was like, oh wait, there's way more of us out here, like doing all sorts of different things. And then just going to different events and meeting other nerds of color. I was like, this is great. There's more of us out here who just like more thing. Like it's great, and there's different types of things too. So like I slowly but surely have collected my fellow Black Anglophiles into like the Twitter corner and the Facebook corner and the Discord corner, because at least so it's been great.
When it comes to, and I'm glad to hear that, mostly because when it comes to, you were talking about the convention, but I know, like, and this is something I just happen to know about you because I know we've talked before, you started out doing a lot of the period pieces. Like I remember seeing you when you were in a full gown that you had made and other things. And I want to talk about that because it kind of ties in. That Anglophile ties into that kind of British style show, which then ties into period drama costuming.
So
that's if I remember correctly, that's where you really got your start. So how was it
so
in the beginning when you were in those groups going to those meetups and things? Because that's what it was. It would be a meetup of people.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think I went to. So I learned how to sew in 2015, and I took a YouTube. I really love the show called Poldark. It was a PBS show. It's not on the air anymore because it's over. I love the main character, Demelza. I loved her dress. It was from. She looks a little, for folks who haven't seen the show, she looks like, her style looks like Hamilton, but just a little bit more working class style. Like Hamilton dresses, just in a plainer colors, not a lot of more linen and cotton, because
high-waisted.
No, actually not high-waisted. It's still like the triangle point thing.
Oh, really? I thought that was a high-waisted one. Maybe I'm thinking of another.
There was a high-waisted one, but like that was later on in the show because they're using time. So like it starts in 1780s before the Regency begins. So I was like, I want that dress, the dress she wore to her wedding, and I learned how to sew in like 9 days to do it, and I wore the outfit to the local Renaissance fair, and that was so much fun. But then it was funny when I started wearing those outfits to conventions, because of course at first I'd wear those things to fandom specific meetups, like, oh, there was an Outlander meetup, I had to have Outlander costumes, there's a Hamilton meetup, But you know what? I might as well wear these to the regular Comic Con. So I'm like, I've spent so much time on these things. You're just gonna get me as I am. So like, also it helps with New York Comic Con in particular. Like, they've had Outlander guests, so like it's very easy to just show up in your big venues, and you're all wool. I was like, yep, I'm in wool, and it's a hot October. Oh wow,
crispy. It was crispy.
No, it's not as bad though. I wore one of the Outlander outfits in San Diego. Now that was wild.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
It was wild. This is 2016. San Diego Comic Con. That was my only one I've been to so far. It was.
And how do you feel like, especially, you said it was a lot of fun because you were seeing people who were in the same fandom, and how do you feel like the reception was? Because at that point, now it's different, as we were just talking about, it's different. But at that point, how is that walking in and connecting with the other costumers and interacting with them? Because I know this story because we've talked, but I want the audience to hear about how that connection started out and what was kind of that spark, because that connection.
Yeah, I mean, the spark really was a Doctor Who fandom, because again, so many, a lot of times you'd walk into these meetups and I'm like one of the very only or very few people of color there. Like, so it was at first awkward, but again, the more I went, the more I realized there are a lot of people who could be in these spaces. They just need to find out they exist, get drawn in, and then bring their friends. That's sort of how, because let's face it, fandom's very cliquey. So like, it's
fandom's what? Say it one more time.
Cliquey. They're
cliquey. Oh yeah.
So like, a lot of times people just don't know that. A lot of times people just share things only with their friends or their group chat, and they don't tell other people that it's happening. So it's sort of, especially when I started attending those out in those conventions and events in period piece clothing, people are like, wait a second, I can do that too. And I'm like, yeah, you can. It's actually a shame that Bridgerton came out during the pandemic, because I don't doubt that if we had a convention and everybody would be.
Well, you saw the Bridgerton experience. People were showing out. I saw.
Exactly.
I forgot the rapper's name. What is her name? It's a. I was gonna say lesbian rapper, but I'm like, that could be so many right now. But their partner had on, the Baps hair. She wore the Baps hair with a full on period gown. Now I don't think she became the diamond at that event, but I know everybody stopped as soon as because they did footage of her coming in, and I was like, this is amazing that you threw, because it was, the Baps hair that I'm talking about, where it's like, it's a movie, for those you don't know, and they wear these elaborate hair pieces, like, I'm talking about hair show hair pieces where it's tall, you might see a helicopter, a full-on cap that comes up, like, kind of stuff like that, but now it's been flipped on its head because it is presented during the period for Bridgerton with the gown. And so it just looks like, it was like, oh, did we start this too? Oh, Lord. Like, it was just such a very distinct look that I was like, ooh, that's so lovely. But every time I see somebody from the Bridgerton experience, I see them putting that twist, that sprinkle, that flavor right on top. And I'm like, love it. Bring it.
Yeah, I have not gotten to the Bridgerton experience yet, mostly because it has not stopped in New York yet. And I'm like,
yep.
Why? Is it that they can't find a spot? Is that maybe they can't find a spot? But I'm like, traveling, because it's like with the overnight stay. I'm like, but I want to do it so bad. So if it didn't come out during the pandemic, I'm sure like every con would have like a billion. All of us be showing up.
True.
Like we'd all come in like in our with our pompadours and our like sparkles and everything. It's been great seeing all those shows, because I feel like people need to see that we are represented in all of these spaces. So even if the plots themselves come with problems, again, not everything's perfect, and
right.
Still at a stage where many of these period dramas are not, and other UK TV shows are not written by Black or people of color screenwriters. Like there's still lots of progress, because let me tell y'all, when I used to go to the Downton Abbey meetups, back like in 2011, 2012, I was always like the only person of color that was not like their staff or like the person, you know, the venue, the folks who like, you know, run the venue. Like I was always often like the only or one, but now it's like every single meetup I've gone to nowadays, like post COVID, like there's always like multiples of people bringing their friends. Like this is what we need. Because
Yeah.
I wish it was like that when I was, I mean, in high school, people invited me to events and stuff. I was like, I didn't want to go because I didn't feel like I would fit in. But now things have changed thanks to social media and the internet, and there's so many more people just purchasing these fandoms. It's great because yeah, you're not going to be the only anymore. Like,
well, I mean, nobody. I don't care who you are. You don't want to be the only salt. You'll never be the only pepper in the middle of the salt. You just don't. Nobody. I don't want to be the blockbuster for the fandom. Like I'm trying to enjoy it like everybody else. Just like you know, just like somebody comes in, you don't want to be the first person in a fandom where it's like I'm here to celebrate this fandom, not teach you why there's you know that even though it's racially ambiguous, it's not a big deal. And it's so interesting because even something like the Sandman that just came out,
yeah,
they changed up some of according to what was in the comic books, and even you know kind of the description of the book. They kind of just were like, we can't. These are not human beings. There was a big chunk of time that we definitely lived through where it was like, if it's sci-fi or fantasy, we're not even going to get a crumb. If we got a crumb, it was just a background person who might walk through with some elf ears. Like you're not getting included, and it made it seem like we not just were written out of history, but also written out of fantasy. And so to see it now where things are so inclusive to the point that you're going to see it. Now, are the storylines correct? Is all the writing perfect? Absolutely not. But you're going to visually see someone of a different skin tone, a POC, a BIPOC. You're going to see somebody. And if you don't, your first question is why? Why can't we be there? And even in British historical context, like I remember Spanish Queen, people were up in arms.
Oh my God.
Up in there. Whoa, why would you? And I was like, do y'all want a history book? I remember the sheer number of things that were coming out of people like, yo, this is not that far off. You need to calm down. You need to actually pick up a book, look at a picture. The idea, they're like, well, Bridgerton, that's just all fiction. I'm like, well, actually, it's not that far-fetched, gal. If you just look at the pictures that are out there, there's just some moments that I'm like, I have questions for the queen. I'm not saying she's not lovely and, you know, doing her business. What I'm saying is I see the paintings of your mama, and if she did, like, she looks like she could bring some collard greens to the picnic. So I just have questions. If we don't talk about it, we don't want to talk about it. Everybody's got skeletons in their closet, but don't tell me, oh no, can't possibly be.
Yeah, it's in the period drama fandoms. It's also it's been a lot of while I am having fun. There's also a lot of hey, there are you know folks of color that have always been here. It's just that historians have not been telling you the entire story. So for every era of roughly British history, like I have like back here in my library, like there's sources for actually one of my books is propping my laptop up, but like I have for roughly every era almost. I can point you to like one or two historians have written all about all POC in that era because I just don't want to hear anymore. Like the Spanish princess one was especially wild. I was like, there was 3 books about Black Tudors that same year. It came out like, you haven't read them.
Yeah.
So, like, 3 of them. Not
she was a lady in waiting, so you know she got married off. And I'm like, you think she just lost all her color when she was married? I want you to understand.
Yeah.
That's not how that happens. Yeah, haters gonna hate. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Haters gonna hate.
And they're gonna it's funny, they keep complaining, and then what ends up happening is I keep reading the press releases, and there's just more. Like literally Stars right now they launched Les Anjous, and there was also folks of color in that cast. I was like, there were, and they had and Anne Boleyn came out on AMC Plus.
Oh yeah, I haven't
was black, and I was like, Jodie Turner-Smith. I mean, the script is not the script has some story problems, but I feel like they kind of didn't do enough with like telling a different story. But just her in those outfits, I was like, yes, this is Like, this is the kind of stuff.
I can work with this. I can work with this.
Like, I can work with this, exactly. So, like, nowadays the period dramas is like, if you're not seeing folks of color, you kind of need to figure out why, and also you have to figure out why, but also because in some stories it is not realistic for us to be there if they're trying to tell a story specifically. I mean, some of the British stories is like, yeah, it was like, okay, we may not have been here, but
even if we weren't there, somebody was there. Whether
exactly
in some form or fashion. So it's fine if you're like, oh well, this was just all of these people. Okay, cool. But you're telling me they were conquering all these places and none of them just scooped up somebody? I just finished watching what was it? RRR.
The 3 hours. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, y'all, like, be ready for that wild. It was a wild, amazing ride, but it was definitely some everything, everywhere at once energy to that. I was like, I was not ready for all this singing, all this dancing, and all this loveliness all in one place. Wow, y'all just took it there, and it's a mix of English and some native languages and stuff. But it was definitely one of those moments of like, we were there. I know that, like, I was talking with some people that I was watching with, and they were like, oh, but these are all just fiction. I was like, the story is fiction. And they were very clear the story is fiction. But the people were real. Like, the people were people that lived. They just wanted to tell it in this fictional manner because this was the dream of, like, what if these two people met? Because they had there was a small bit of contemporariness, but not enough to have, like, the grandiose story that they put together. But they also were just like, we want to celebrate this. This is the way we want to celebrate. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. In my mind, this all goes back to the idea of critical race theory. And I hate to go that place, but it does, because I'm like, okay, if y'all won't tell it in school, we gonna tell it out in the world. And we're going to do it a lot more intense and in your face than in a schoolroom. So you can say, oh, we don't want this. Well, but I was like, but these are the same kids and stuff who are growing up and looking into the face of history and being like, ain't that grandma? That sure looked like grandma who brought the potato salad on Thursday. Grandma, ain't that you? Like,
yeah.
You think you're covering something up and you think you're not giving the history, but the reality is they're going to get it in mass media. Because as much as people want to pretend like school's the only place you can learn stuff, I learned a lot of stuff outside of school. People, we now have the Brit Box. We now have these other places. Even Bridgerton has its moments of there is a thin line of reality. And people, sometimes all they need is a little thread and then they'll blow it up on you. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much here.
It was so funny. Speaking of like a little crumb here, one of the PBS shows recently, All Creatures Great and Small, that book was very white because James Harriet was obviously a very white guy living in Yorkshire, England in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. But in the new series, they casted all, because he's a for folks who don't know, he's a veterinarian. So he wrote basically his life story in books, but he changed the name of himself and all his friends so he wouldn't get sued. So Harriet had this book and stuff. So, but when they're showing it in screen now, they had a version of it in the 70s, which is on BritBox. But in 2020, you can't just have a show now with only white people in it. Like, you kind of have to change some things. So they did a very subtle way, because obviously in these isolated rural towns there really was not, but they did acknowledge diversity in some very different and distinct ways. First of all, they featured Irish travelers, and they did not use the G word slur. For example, that was a very big one. They're like, they are different from us, but travelers different from us, but they love their animals. And the whole plot was about this woman and her dog and finding a stray dog, and she adopts the stray dog. So, like, again, the world is expanding and opening up in a way, but it's not in a way that they are trying to tell a historical story. So they are trying to it's not like Bridgerton where they're just not making stuff up, like it was actually happened. Yep. But they're acknowledging these different ways. And they also have the rival vet is a South Asian man, Dr. Pandy. They argue about like stealing clients, but like it's so obvious about like, oh no, you stole my client, like, but like it's so obvious. Like, yes, England in 1930s had a lot of things in India, so clearly he moved to England to practice animal medicine. Right. And then one of the farming couples, the Chapmans, Anne Chapman is is biracial, and she met her husband, who's white, she met him while she was doing domestic service, and but they ended up him marrying her. Like at that point, it wasn't illegal because it's not like America. Interracial marriage was never legal at that point, but it was obviously frowned upon. It's like some of the neighbors shunned them, but they still had to, take care of their family, and they're now retired. So, but they come to they ask the vets for help because their border collie had to give birth and one of the puppies was stuck. But through that they tell you yeah, racism's bad, like
Yeah.
But they start out with, well, the puppies have to be born. So
well, and I think when it comes to just that style of nerd,
yeah,
I think that there is just this thread that has now been put there that racism's bad because it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. When all these shows were coming out, they were just like, yeah, there's just people who are underneath us. That was the underlying thing. There are people who are less than. And now it's like, yes, historically that was the thought, but that's not how it should be. There's always, I have yet to see a show from a recent show. Well, let me back myself up. A recent show where it does not have at least one character who's like, why are you treating them like that? Why are you, a person who, is saying this is not the humane way. This is not the right way. And whether they're fictional or not, there is some person who is spouting that kind of rhetoric, which we would never, there would be none of them. I'll be like, and no.
This is why I love the Gilded Age so much, because I think people were expecting something. I think it was because they heard from the creator Down Abbey, they expected something different. But then what people don't realize is that the creator Julian Fellows, he took some of the feedback that folks of color in England gave him about what went kind of sideways history-wise, and took it with him with this new project, and he consulted Black historians. So that's why we have Peggy and her family is a fairly large section of the plot. Like, you can't, some of it, obviously she's not going to interact with everybody historically because there's a whole class thing there as well, but there's some characters they're never going to see them, her
on stage on the screen together, right? But there is a whole plot line about her being from a wealthier side and her having more opportunity, and kind of that whole idea of, hey, you know what, we're going to just go ahead and not talk, because that was a normal thing. If you were pregnant, and skin color aside for that one moment, if you were pregnant and you were not married and had a guy right there, it automatically stopped your chances on so many things. And so there were many families who were like, you know what, we just gonna we take this little person and we'll put them over here. Let's not talk about that again, so that you can move forward as a woman.
Well, I mean, it's funny. In Peggy's case, she was actually, which I think was essentially important. I think so many times people fall into that trap of the Black unmarried mother. No, she was married.
She was.
But I think they didn't approve of the marriage. That's what happened. The father didn't like him as a spouse. So he kind of just had the annulment. But yeah, Peggy was, when she was pregnant, she was married. So it's
true.
Again, but that was something a white father could have done, which I think that's what I loved about it. I was I was getting ready for that hysteria. When I heard her backstory, I was like, okay, I know it's gonna be tragic, but I was waiting for something very where race was definitely a huge factor. But then when I heard, I was like, wait, no, this is white women have this story from back in 1882. If the father didn't like the spouse and they eloped anyway, he just dissolved it. That's
no, thank you.
They gave the baby up for adoption. That was totally typical. From a sexism point of view, I was like, yeah, this is great that we're seeing a Black female character where, again, she was never a servant, she was never a slave. It might have been in her family tree, but by that point in 1882, that's not happening anymore. Yes, there's still bad stuff, but again, her struggle really is starting her career in a era where there's a lot of changes, and she needs to find her place, and which is why I'm excited for season 2 to see what they're gonna do with her next.
Agreed.
There's a lot of opportunities to squeeze into Ida Be Well story.
Well, I think that with opportunities, as we're kind of talking about all of this and getting towards our places, when it comes to the opportunities, one of the ones that you have kind of touched upon that I'd love for you to expand upon, you were talking about how you went to, I think you said it's Dragon Con, and you saw other blurs representing other nerddoms, and you were like, ooh, look at all this. So now that you have been to many places, done multiple panels, done it virtual, my first question about that is, what's the con? And I would say this is probably pre-pandemic, because post-pandemic cons are very different. But pre-pandemic, what's the con that you were like, that con was like so amazing as far as like really embracing the British kind of Anglophile, that whole idea, and they really made a space for us. They did not push us off into the corner for our meetup, and made it so that I felt comfortable there.
Well, it's funny. I have not had officially a Black Anglophile meetup yet.
Yes, true.
So mostly for logistical reasons, and also to friendships and stuff change or whatever. So one of my favorite cons, period, for just having a huge Anglo-centric fandom based thing is Dragon Con in Atlanta, because they have the entire Brit track. Now, often Brit track, it doesn't even think. It's one of my it's like the 10-year, 5-year plan, whatever. So
we're working on it. We're working on it,
right? So there's a Brit track. Oftentimes it gets taken over all entirely by Doctor Who, but there's also space to talk about all sorts of other British media fandoms. Like, I noticed they did the call out for panelists. I can't go this year for work reasons, but I noticed they were talking about Mr. Malcolm's List, and they were talking about all sorts of different things, like recent releases, and also just old back in the day stuff as well. That is not just the shows that you will see on PBS or Acorn and BritBox, not just Doctor Who, which is great. Now, there's actually in Seattle there's another all British convention. I haven't gone yet because of the pandemic, but I'm curious to check it out next year. I was like, ooh, this looks exciting. I think it's called BritCon. I think it's in Seattle. I know, which is like a trek, but I'm gonna try. I'll see what happens next year.
Okay.
Schedule. So
I feel like it's a possibility. And I guess so. You're saying Dragon Con has a Brit track to it, so it really is very friendly for people who are really into this. Now, when it comes to, I'm just Joe Schmo, I'm sewing my stuff, I like putting together, my period pieces and things like that, where do they start? And where they start that would be a safe start? Like, I want to go somewhere, I want to meet up, whether it's virtual, whether it's real, like, is there a difference? How do you pick?
It really depends. Well, here's the thing. I mean, with obviously it's sort of like knowing your people. Now, depending on the fandom, because again, period drama is a lot of different things at once. So, like, for example, like every corner is going to have their spot of folks of color. For the Outlander folks, I joined very early on the Blacklanders with the Z. The Blacklanders we've had some in-person meetups before COVID, but it's just kind of hard because people live all over the place. But there's a Twitter account and a social media account that everybody talks through regularly. If it's not about even when Outlander's out of season, folks still talking about other related science fiction and fantasy shows, or just things about Black culture in general, which is great.
Right.
For folks who are into Bridgerton and assorted things, I belong to a Facebook and a Facebook group called the Jane Austen Universe, and also there's a Discord group as well attached to that, where we are talking about Jane Austen related things and Bridgerton and all that stuff in a more inclusive fashion, because it's hard to find, especially in those set of fandoms where there's a lot of Karens out there, so it is very hard to find spaces where Karening is not allowed. And there's also Black Girl Loves Jane. She's a blogger and also has her own community group there in that space. And there's also a podcast. There's also a couple of podcasters here and there that do if you just kind of crawl through my follower list, I'm probably about to forget 6 people and hate me. That are in that Austin Bridgerton space. Now, in other fandoms, a lot of times I just start talking about how I love the fandom and then folks find me, which helps a lot. Especially on Twitter, where if it's any of the PBS shows, like I'm live tweeting every single Sunday. Well, most Sundays. So sometimes there's a Sunday I have to like let go if I'm on vacation or something. But like I'm always on that hashtag, like hey, this is me talking about Call Midwife again, or whatever is on at that, whatever's on. So yeah, finding your people is always hard. But I would say is if you're whatever social media site you're on, just start with, you could start the up our hearts. Yep. Oh yeah, somebody else said they want to follow me right there. So yeah, it's you kind of have to start just with, if you do a search on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, start looking at who's talking. That's not like obviously just find a PR account first, but then like look at your icons, see who's talking about that show. And if you see that they're black, because people are very loud about announcing that these days, because for many reasons, give them a follow. Sometimes people might, and don't just use the BLM hashtag as a thing, because a lot of white people use that now. But if you look at what they're posting about, you can probably tell right away, and be like, hey, do you belong to any groups, and just start following people from there. That's kind of. I wish I could be the person to be like, hey, I'm gonna organize a brand new thing. I kind of can't because when I'm freelance writing, so much of my time even though I don't have I may not have an assignment immediately out there, but I know that in about a month or two I'm going to be swamped because fall TV's coming out, and there are times where I have breaks, but then there's also times where it's like a flood of things. I am kind of on a pause right now, but there's a lot coming out in the fall, so I cannot be that person that's there to organize everything. But if you're into these fandoms, I hope you follow me after this, because I can then tell you who folks are that you should follow that are when I say period, there's a lot of stuff that counts as period.
And if you
not all of it I can watch, because for example, I am not so much into the things that take place before 1500. It's roughly there are things that are medieval, and even some of the Tudor stuff is not always my jam. So there's folks who just follow the Tudors medieval stuff. There's folks who are into ancient history. There are folks who are into the Vikings and all that. Society for Creative Anachronism stuff that's kind of interesting, but also not my particular cup of tea. Yeah, my favorite centuries are the 18th and 19th century, early 19th century. So.
And what's your Twitter handle if people do want to follow? Because we had it up on the screen, but I'd love for you to say it out loud.
Yeah, at Amanda Rae Prescott. It's my name with 2 letters missing because Twitter would not fit it in. Yeah. Amanda Rae couldn't fit my whole name.
Couldn't fit the whole thing.
At least it's just enough for people to search. Cool. I have a blue check, so.
Hey, come on with the blue check.
Very hard one. Yeah, very hard one. I don't always use my blue check powers, just because I don't want to become the main character. So I don't want to be the main character today ever. No. So I'm no, but
Got that blue check power, okay?
Yeah, it's mostly because of the fact that I just didn't want, because I'm now publishing stuff, I just didn't want people pretending to be me. And anybody trying to, that's a difficult task.
Yes. Yes, it's an uphill.
I'm not sure how you're gonna do it, pull off, but I just didn't want anybody trying to, so that's why I kind of got it. Right. And ironically, I got it the same week when they opened up the application again, last year. I was in 2021 they opened up the application. That same week, some one fandom got really mad at me and were like, you should be fired from your freelancing gig. I'm like, that's not how freelancing works, but okay. And then a couple days later, Twitter's like, congratulations, you're verified. I was like, y'all thought you could get rid of me. Yeah, can't.
And now I'm here.
Now I'm here.
Okay, so thank you for the information on if you're into that period drama or British or Anglophile, and kind of the one that we highlighted was Dragon Con and that track they have, but also just going ahead and making sure that you keep up with conversations, throw it out there that you like something, and then start looking at the comments, not just the main person who posted, but also those comments, and ask the questions.
Actually, wait, I forgot. There's one more group. There's one more space.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're gonna kill me if
What
I
is it?
forget this. So I'm also part of another Discord called Black Nerds Create. Now, Black Nerds
Ah.
Create sort of got every fandom in there, but there is also a Anglophile section, which also frequently overlaps with there's a lot of folks who love Lord of the Rings. So there's a whole and it started out as a Harry Potter group, but then of course once Harry Potter became the mess it is, and the creator is a hot mess, so like people started branching out into like, hey, what other fandoms do we like? A lot of folks also just do a lot of folks just into like YA and adult fantasy as well. There's a lot of like book discussion too, but yeah, they have a Twitter page, and the Discord's probably invite only, but like they have a Twitter page where they talk about a lot of different things at once. And there's also a Doctor Who contingent there too. So we've done virtual events because obviously I kind of met up with, they did things at cons back before COVID, but like I did join them after during the pandemic. So yeah,
Right.
it's a kind of a catch-all for everything at this point. But it's great slowly and surely finding my folks in a way where, because organizing things is a lot.
Yes. It's good. It's always good to be able to find those like-minded people so that you can celebrate what you love with other people you love who also kind of look like you. They ain't got to be exactly your face, but at least having the same tonalities, body types, sexualities. It just makes it so much warmer in your heart. And I'm going to ask, so this is going to, representation matters. Thank you very much. Representation always matters. So I think I have two more questions, and I think this one is something I just want to know.
Okay.
What's going on with you and Twitter? Or excuse me, you and TikTok? Because I know you have a Twitter. I know you have
I do not. Okay,
and
so
I want to know why.
TikTok, I just am not into TikTok. What I will do is I will go on Twitter and see the cute puppies or kids, but I just don't like a lot. For me, like I know, for me, sort of like I'm not really that great sometimes with like video. Like I will take photos on Instagram, but me and video are not always friends. So like I don't have a TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok account to follow other people. What I will do is if somebody will post a TikTok on Facebook or on Twitter or like in a group chat, I'll go look at the individual TikToks.
But you do not partake in the TikTok. Because
No,
the reason I
also
ask is because I know you create. And I know that you're creating costumes like that along the way. And so I was like, I wonder, because and mind you, because I post across the board, across all social media, I'm always interested in when I see something not represented for someone, because I'm like, I wonder why. I don't know if everybody wonder why, but I want to know why. I'm nosy like that, just so we're clear. And it was just a question that popped in my head when I'm researching you about that.
Yeah, it's just pretty much I just don't use it. It's sort of like part of me sometimes feels like also since I've been doing more writing than costume creation right now, like I haven't sewn a costume like fully in quite a while, like over a year. So I've kind of been a bit on a hiatus anyway of costuming. Like there's some local meetups here and there, but like again on a whole, I'm sort of like mostly rewearing things I made like before pandemic because I have not been able. So, but yeah, TikTok and me are just not really friends. Also, too, I think demographically speaking, a lot of the period drama folks tend to have tended to be a little bit older than the main base of TikTok. Folks in there, like, folks are like, they're not teenagers, so older folks tend not to TikTok. Kind of thing. Yeah, like, or if they're there, it's only for the dog videos, which,
And the last question, because I love that you gave some tips on how to kind of move into that idea of I like a different style of nerd, but I want to know what's the show or event or thing that got you to get started, like the very start. What was the first one? Because that's how I want to close it out, is like I want to hear that last little quick, this is what
honestly I found my period drama friends, even though at first they were white. I found them from Doctor Who.
Oh, okay.
Doctor Who was the beginning because again, obviously when you're at a Doctor Who meetup or event, like folks are watching British stuff, even if it's not always what I watched, it's British. Because again, back then, back in the day, a lot of people love Game of Thrones and stuff that I don't always watch. But like, that's where it started. It was Doctor Who allowed me to find the Jane Austen friends, to find the folks who are Christian. It is a gateway drug.
It is a gateway drug. It's the gateway.
Because all those other fandoms,
they just swoop in.
They scooped in. Like, I found my Downton Abbey friends from Doctor Who fandom. That's where it really started for me.
There you go. There you go.
I mean,
and that's
I had other fandoms before them, but like Doctor Who really was the spot.
Well, and like I said, this is where we met, and this is, and I know that we are closing up shop. I want to thank you so much for being here, for sharing all this stuff with us. I know that it's one of those things of, it's not something that everybody talks about, but I always have, I still follow you to this day. When I met you, I was like, oh, look at this. This is amazing. And I love that you talked about it in a racial way. I feel like that was so skipped over. So thank you so much for being here, Amanda. Was there anything else you wanted to say to the crowd, and just give them one last sentence, and your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is at Amanda Rae Prescott. I have a portfolio blog as well that's linked in there. But if not, you want to check me out. All my writing and stuff is on AmandaRaePrescott.com. I bought my own name as domain. Yay! So I have a portfolio, my blog that I always update, but I have like all my stuff there so you can like peruse through. There will be show spoilers, unfortunately. Sorry, y'all. But yeah, all my blog posts and stuff are there too.
All right. And that's AmandaRaePrescott.com. Thank you so much for being with us, Amanda Rae.
Well, thanks. Have a good night.
Fox Den. This has been the Fox Den. And what were you saying, Amanda? I'm so sorry.
I'm just saying good night, y'all.
Good night, everybody. And yes, good night. And if you want to follow me for any reason, I'm at Fox Squire 2016 on all social media. And thank you so much for embracing your spectacle with us tonight. I love everybody. I love everybody. Good night.
Crossfire. It's caught in the crossfire. Caught in the crossfire.